Good morning, everyone. So this is part 2 of this old Jeep. Put a wide angle lens on, back the thing up. Hopefully that's a little better than the first one. So before I get started, I want to talk a little bit about what tools we use to do the job and show you what I did last night. I had about 2 hours straight work last night, which is quite a lot. But we'll show you what I did to get it, because most of the floor is completely polished metal now, if you can see it behind me. And what you use to do that, wire brush on a drill. That's good to get whatever grit off, road grime, which you're going to have a lot in a postal Jeep. The main tool you'll use is a cutoff tool, a grinder. This wheel, let's see if I can't get this closer, is how you're going to do a lot of your major sanding. Now, this thing, I've used it so much that it's a lot smoother now than it should be. But that's an 80 grit sander, and it just spins. And you don't want to use that on the sort of the finished paint of the body, because it's quite rough. You'll see up here it leaves a lot of marks, and you got to buff them out. But if you're going to weld, or up underneath on the floorboards, I'd definitely use it. It saves a lot of time. You're gonna see a lot of holes up here, and I would have never found them without this. The other kinds of attachments when you're working on the Jeeps that you use, and they also go in the grinder, is there's a big cutoff wheel. You can see how thick it is. This is good for like the frame and really heavy metal that you just want to get clean, or if you really want to file something down. Alright, and then there's what's called the actual cutting disc. Now, I'm going to talk about this before I show it to you. You don't need to use a cutting disc unless you can weld, because this, very thin, super dangerous. These break, they fly off, they have a metal ring here, and if they're not good discs, they can shatter. Now, I'm going to show you here in just a minute. I can prove that to you. But they lock on here with this. And I want to point out there's no guard on this. Don't ever use one like this. I'm not using this like this. It's just for the camera. To prove that I'm not just saying that, that's my actual cutoff tool. Handle, guard, I recommend using it just like this, the whole shebang, because they can kick back on you. They're dangerous. I also really recommend, even though it's a pain, using battery ones, because you're going to find there's a lot of angles you need to get at, and a cord makes it just that much more dangerous, because if you step on this and you got one of these on, it can cut your arm off. While we're talking about that, always wear gloves when you're grinding. I don't care what you're grinding with. Any of those wheels can break. They all throw stuff off. If you're completely new to cars and heavy stuff and together, I recommend is getting a grinder, not starting with one of these. Starting with one of these. Getting some metal, putting your gloves on and stuff, and just clamp it down. When people say they were talking about clamps, I'll go ahead and mention that. When they're talking about welding, these are what they mean. They clamp and they hold. They're adjustable, right there. So I would clamp some metal down somewhere and sort of start the grinder. Let's see if I got it. I would start the grinder and just edge my way into what I'm doing. These batteries are all dead. We'll give one a try here just for the... There's no disc on it. So I would just edge my, you would turn it on and you just bump the metal at first, because what you're going to have, it's going to throw a lot of sparks. It's kind of fun, I'm not going to lie. It's kind of scary the first time you do it. But yeah, I mean, if I'm totally new to cars, I would get old part or whatever, and I would just kind of bump up to it, and because what you're going to feel is it's going to resist, it's going to grab. and that's why they put a handle on it. Once you get used to it, it doesn't bother you. The sparks can fly all over you. But that's why you want leather gloves. I mean, these protect you a lot, but they also don't catch on fire. And, you know, I'm not doing this because it's a video. I mean, this is just really what I do. I also wear hearing protection. I hate loud noise. It's just kind of funny because I restore cars and stuff, but I just can't stand it. And so, I wear that. This is super important, the goggles. And you want some that go all the way around. These are actual 3M safety glasses for the job. They're not that expensive, to be honest with you. $3. Save your eyes. I know people that can't use their eyes anymore because of grinding and accidents and things. All right, so that's your rough sort of construction tools, right? Besides this is useful painting, rough construction, whole thing. And this is an air gun. You hook it to your air compressor, and it blows air, and that's how you keep it clean like that. I don't know if you can see in the background. I can't tell on the little lens, but we're going to get a close-up anyways, because I'm going to show you the metal. But you just keep blowing it out all the time, and because you're going to get covered with dust, more dust than you can even imagine. That's why you see me. I wear a different shirt and stuff underneath this every day, but I'm wearing the same coveralls. That's mad, because you'd just be washing clothes forever otherwise. Okay, but once you've done all that, you know, depending on where you're at, I don't bother with trying to get the floorboards real smooth and stuff. Some people do. I mean, you'll see later, I tend to put a mat here, and then the seats are there, and I just think the floorboards take a beating no matter what. And so I'm more worried about getting the metal, you know, really structurally sound as opposed to looking good, because you can always put floor mats and stuff over that. But when you do, you know, when you do the body, and you're still going to need this in here, you know, the sander you use it with an air compressor. This in the field it's called a DA. It stands for dual action, and it just sands, and it can swing around and move a lot of different ways, and so it helps you get across like the ridges and bumps and stuff. But when you have a flat surface, and you know, these DJs and the old CJs, they do have a lot of flat surface. This here is a plain sander, a flat sander. I mean, they call them a lot of different things. Straight sander. This is great. Now, we're going to go into it a little later when we start talking, you know, actually doing some painting. But this is also how you get your surface flat, because when you're not very experienced, it's hard to see, you know, like the little dents and stuff. But there's a trick. You know, you can spray some paint on, run across this, and you'll see, they'll reveal themselves. The other thing is that this is good for getting some really heavy stuff off. So this floor was a real mess, worse than it looked, because they sprayed some chemical on it. Then this is 36 grit paper. Smaller the number, the more coarse it is, and so, you know, it'll leave scratches and stuff at this level. But you can see it also took up some serious gunk, because this sandpaper didn't last more than a couple of minutes on that floor. So we're gonna move up here in a second really slow, because the camera does not like sort of change. I mean, a camcorder would be better for this, but I'm just like y'all, I don't have tons of money, and that's an expensive camera to begin with. I do videos for other things. So if you remember, this was my plate that was on the floor. Now, let's see what we've got here. This side came out pretty good. All right. And I'll show you. Let's be a fuzzy here for a second. That's an actual post office piece of sheet metal. You can see it stamped right there. All right. Now, the other thing you're going to see that I couldn't see myself last night, if you look above that hole, there's a crack. All right. And it's not all the way through, but it will be soon. And here, just from the back, and this is why you have to clean the metal up, and this is why I was saying don't use pop rivets and things. That's cracked. I can fix it, but had I not caught it, it would have been done. Now here's the other thing. Look how pitted that is. All right, this is still usable, believe it or not, but this is not sanded enough. It needs to be shiny metal. when it's got to that state. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the camera around here and shine it at the floor, and then we're going to just get a quick talk about what we got going on here. And I'm going to stop the camera, and I think I'm going to take that dash off right there. In fact, I'm going to talk about how to do it after I move the camera. I've been weary on this, but because the surface is bad enough, I'm going to go ahead and paint all the way up underneath. You don't have to do that. I think, you know, if you're trying to restore it to keep for a long term and you really want it to be nice, then you probably should. And you're going to see it's not as hard as it sounds. What you don't want to do is disconnect a bunch of wires up there that you don't know how to put them back. And it can be done. You know, you can lay the dash down and wrap it. Well, there's a few ways. But that steering wheel has to come off. Really, it'll be in your way. And so let me move the camera up here, and let me just show you some things we're going to talk about here. And these are things that are be common. So I'm not going to turn the camera off. I'm just going to move it up. So sorry, you're going to be out of focus for a minute. Well, I'll get better at the camera thing here. Don't worry. I'm impatient. So, what we got? You don't love me for my camera skills anyway, I hope. So let's see if we can see this on camera. Yeah, we can. So, right here is a series of holes, and that's straight through the metal. And it's just what I thought. Because this was pop riveted in, moisture got underneath, got trapped, and it rusted it through. And this is actually okay. Strong, real strong. You know, this here is actually part of a plate. I need to fix that, but I'm going to weld all this up because that's just what I do. Realistically though, if this were your Jeep, you wouldn't actually have to weld this, believe it or not. You could put that seam sealer right along it because you have a patch, and it would come out the bottom and it would fill this. You just have to make sure it did, and you would rub it. It's not the best way in the world, but I mean, because you've got a strong piece of metal on it, it is actually a fix. You could also use JB Weld right there. I mean, I don't particularly like it, but it would also fix the hole, because this is structurally sound. What you don't want is moisture coming through, and so that's what you've got to stop. Now, I don't know if we can see this or not. We're going to try, because this is a common problem in DJs and CTA5. Let's see if we can. Nope. Sorry. Told y'all I suck at a camera. I don't think you can get a good look at it, but right here underneath the pedal, completely the metal's all cracked. And the reason it is because this pedal assembly is down too far. You see this a whole lot in the CJ series because they lift them up, they take the body off, they readjust it, and then the panel moves, and so you can see that. That's no good. That has to be fixed. Right? And in the DJ series, if you do a body lift, that's gonna happen, because the pedals are not in the same place in relationship to the body. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people on the forum saying, well, you can do up to 2.5 inch body lift, and that's better than doing a lift like with the springs for people who want to lift. I'm not saying that those people are wrong, but I don't agree with them, and the reason is that's the stock position. There's not even a 1/4 or 1/2 inch there. I mean, if you lift this 2.5 inches, that is going to be down here. And so I actually don't see how that works. Actually, that's going to be up there, sorry. But I don't see how that works for people, but I mean, I'm sure it can. People have done it. But I just want to point out that, you know, on DJs this is common. This is a common thing that's broke. I assume what they're doing is cutting that anyway. But you want to reinforce that because it makes noise, and more importantly, it's moving all over the place. I mean, eventually, you know, if someone's flying their foot on that, they could put their foot through the floorboard. They probably would never would, but they could. And so I've got a bunch of gunk here too. I mentioned on the first video, but you probably can see it now. It's just where there's an oil filter here, oil pressure, it just blew out everywhere. And that was part of why I had such a hard time cleaning it. I can't stand mechanical gauges inside a Jeep or inside any vehicle because of that. I like electric gauges. They cost more, and actually the oil pressure was not as accurate. But man, I just tend to build my stuff right the first time, and if I need an oil pressure gauge, I put it under the hood. You know, that just, to me, it's not worth it. You'll see when I pull this down, there's not a lot of wires for a car in there, but it's going to seem like a lot of wires if you've never worked on a car. And they're just all covered with oil. And I don't want to rewire the whole Jeep because I'm trying to keep the cost down. But I will if I have to, because it's going to be safe regardless. And this can cause a fire. So that's a wrap. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take this dash off. Let it refocus. Now I've already had this dash off a little bit because I was looking at the wires situation. But when you go to your dash, here's screws all the way around. They're literally run all the way around the top. They go through the windshield wiper motor, which is over there on that side where you would normally drive. And when they're all off, this can actually pull out, right? And you just got to be careful. And you just the steering wheel's a little harder to get off. There's some bolts down, or some bolts up underneath. 2 of them you have to take off. And there's one big one on a DJ right here that gives support to the dash because of this. Oops, sorry. Let me just thought that wide angle would help, but I'm too close to the wall. We're learning here, folks. Alright, so that screw I'm talking about is right there. And it runs back to the body, and so you just want to take this end of it off, but you have to reach under and hold it. And what that does is give this support, because this is actually not supported by anything. In a DJ, the column ends right here under the floor. And then there's another shaft that connects to it. And so we can pull, the DJs, you can pull them out pretty easy. On a CJ, like an old CJ5, you can't really pull that out because they have what they call a raw steering box, which is just under there. And it's attached to the frame. It's super hard to get out. You know, you got all these people say, oh, you do this, that, and I'm telling you, they're super hard to get out. No person who's just started working on cars is going to get a raw steering gear out on a CJ. It's not without tearing it up or getting some help or something. These, though, they come out pretty easy. It's not really dangerous. So you just undo this little turn signal. They call them Spartan turn signals. And they kind of added on afterthought. It's kind of weird because with the DJ, they came on there, but they weren't put on there by Jeep. So they weren't put on by the manufacturer. They were put on by the person that outfitted these as opposed to Jeep. Or maybe they're ordered for the post office that way. I'm not sure, but the point is that, you know, when you got a CJ, this turn signal wasn't there. But you'll find they have them as well now. And so that comes off and it just hangs. There's a steering button that runs to the middle. And most of them are disconnected. But we're not really trying to just walk off of the steering wheel necessarily. So we're going to lay that down anyways. And when you do, you can see the plugs and everything. But the idea is to get this out of the way because we're going to spray primer up underneath there. I'm going to spray paint under there. I mean, you don't have to. You can just spray it for spray paint or whatever under there if you want. Because, you know, if you spray enough spray paint and it's in the shade all the time, it's good. I mean, it's not great, but it's good. But, you know, you can take your gun and spray under there. That's what I'm going to do. Unfortunately, I can't show you painting with my gun because this is a $2,000 camera. And there's no way to control the mist, and just a spec can screw these cameras up. I mean, this is a camera that I use for shooting videos, and it's set in steel all the time. And, you know, I just can't afford it. So here's what else we're going to look at when you're taking the dash. So we're going to take out these knobs. If you look really close, they have a little screw there. It's pretty hard to get hold of when they've been on there for a long time. And then that's why I said you can lay it down and leave the wires on. You just have to be careful. So like if you have milk crates or something like milk crates, you can lay them down here on the floor, turn that dash over and lay it on it, and then you can get it behind it. And that's what I recommend people who are just starting out do. I don't think you should try to take this all the way out. I don't think you definitely shouldn't unplug those wires. It's just too easy to get confused. You know, you can be the smartest person in the world, but if you're not used to doing this, and it's not intuitively, you can't just look at the wires and go, well, I know where that goes. It's better to just leave it there. I'm going to be removing some stuff. In this Jeep, these two gauges work. These in my Jeep. So I'll show y'all something here. In my Jeep, these two gauges work, and they're great. These are actual Jeep gauges that may or may not have came in this Jeep, but they're for Jeeps. I have a voltmeter here, some cheap thing that I put on. It doesn't work. And you can see that it used to have two more gauges. Obviously the one that was the oil pressure gauge that blew out. And I bet money the old one was a temperature gauge and it blew out as well. I just can't stand mechanical gauges. I can't tell y'all that enough. That's what this was. It's going. Even the volt one. It doesn't work. There's no reason for it to be here. On my particular Jeep, my real gauge, which is blown on my steering wheel unfortunately, none of it works, and I won't sell it that way. So I really don't know what my temperature's doing in this. I think I mentioned to y'all I think it's running out, but I'm not positive. Well, that's why. It doesn't have a temperature gauge, doesn't have a fuel gauge, doesn't have a speedometer, but they sell that whole cluster. And I'm going to list some links in this video where you can get those clusters, gauges, and some of the stuff we're going to be talking about. Like some of the tools, I'll list how you can get those. Cheap ones, if you're just getting into it, Harbor Freight, Northern Tool, I think it's called. You know, you don't have to have expensive stuff. I don't. And I don't have any, and like the tools that I use are specialized. I've made them with the other tools I've had. So the most expensive thing I have is this camera I'm filming with, and I have a Hobart welder. You know, and I got the Hobart welder on sale on a Black Friday sale. I didn't pay that much for it. And I'm not a welder, by the way. You're going to see me, I'm going to do a lot of welding in here. I wouldn't weld on the frame of the suspension, for example. I have cousins that are professional welders. I would take it to them. But, you know, it's the reason I mention it is because some people don't have the confidence to try to grind and to do a little what we call tack welding. I think you should try it. Certainly the cleaning, the grinding, because even if you can't put it back the way it needs to be, when you go to a welder, if you say you want to tack weld it, means it's just gonna, we're gonna point down a little bit. Tack welding is fine, right? So when you talk about you want to tack weld, all the welder is going to do is he's just going to tink, weld there, weld there, weld there, weld there. And in fact, if you look from the factory, you can see the dips. Well, that's exactly what they've done from the factory. So it is perfectly fine, despite what people will tell you. They use a machine at the factory. It's called a spot welder, and you'll hear these called spot welds even when maybe someone tacks it personally. But a spot welder it's a device that has 2 points, and they come together and they clamp on the metal. You can buy spot welders, but you're not really going to use that. The way you're going to do it, the way a welder's going to do it, is they're going to just drill some little holes and weld through them and holds, or they're just going to do the edges. Most people do the edges. And so, I guess what I'm saying here is that if you want to grind all this down yourself, I mean, you can see this is, you remember what it looked like in the other video. This is metal. I mean, this is bare metal. In fact, I need to get this covered. Because if you let this sit too long, it'll just rust again. And it'll rust before you can see it. And they've got some stuff you wipe it down called metal prep, and I don't have any here within reach, but you rub this down and that kind of stops whatever rust you've got. Now, we're also spraying with rust inhibiting primer, so I'm not as worried. But I was doing this at night last night, so I couldn't see. There's still some spots here where I think I need to get it a little bit better, but you wouldn't normally have to go this far. The reason I did this is because there was a lot of rust. And so you want bare metal showing when you've got rust to make sure it's gone. On the outside of the body, I won't be doing this. It'll just be probably more, you know, scuffed, and try to pull up all the dead paint, and then we'll go from there. I'll show y'all how to do that too, but it doesn't hurt to go down to bare metal on the outside. It just gives you a lot more work. The good thing about it is that you see exactly the state of your Jeep underneath there. So if you're someone who's really thorough and you've got the time, I mean, I'm going to a mine. Oh, I have a CJ, and it's due. I was never going to paint it, but it's starting to show a little rust, and I can't have that, so I'm going to take it down to at least this level here. And that's actually paint. That's factory primer right there. You know, like, here, let me see. So yeah, that's factory primer here, there. So I've taken that pretty far because they had sprayed this a few times. So the trouble spots that you get on the DJ is the floor. Let me pull this down so we can show both angles. What we got there? Let's see. Really? I don't know if it can get it. It can't actually, unfortunately. So what? Sorry, my camera's doing all by itself. So the trouble spots that you get in the DJ, and you're going to have to check, is when you first come into the vehicle, where the door bumps up against the threshold, that tends to rust out on the DJ. And the reason is because people's feet have been rubbing against it. You know, the grime, even the morning dew sets on there because the doors don't set. Like, it's not like a conventional car where the doors are sealed up against the body. There's a seal and the door's setting up against it, but there's still, you know, moisture getting through. And so the DJs rust out real bad down here and along this edge where mine is rusted. Where you get rust on the CJs is in, let's see if we can point across, because this is pretty important to know this. So maybe if I go over there, let's see if we can pull that off. Yeah, let me see. Sorry guys, I'll get better. Alright, let me just come around front. So, the edge I was talking about is here for the DJ. All through here. And on these edges if they haven't been taken care of. Alright? And that's why I've got these all, if you look, they're outlined with bare metal. I want to make sure there's no rust I didn't see. Now what you get in a CJ, which is a little different, is it rusting behind this support. Up here. Right in front of where the body, so the CJ's like this. The body comes up like this. Whereas the DJ is flat across. And so that's why it rusts here. The CJ doesn't do that because water doesn't get in here. Whatever doors they have are against here, and they have a drain plug through the floor to let water out. I've been tempted to put those in these DJs, but I've just decided against that. I guess the water will run out. I don't know. I'm still up in the air on that, but it hasn't happened yet. So CJs are actually more difficult to fix in this regard because the rust is behind that, which means you're actually cutting the outer body. And in my Jeep, that's exactly where it's rusting. Because what happens, it condensates from under the dash and it runs down behind. And this is also, if you were to seam seal that, if you'll remember I was talking about the seam sealer, that prevents most of that. So we're going to do that in here. We're going to do that right here. It's going to be seam sealed down here. This Jeep was seam sealed on the back right here against the wall. Alright, and so we're going to seam seal all this because this is welded. You can see those, like I was saying, those spot welds on the floor. So we're just, anywhere I see that, I'm gonna seam seal around it. Yeah, so I'm gonna go through. I'm gonna find myself something to lay down on, so this will be done the same way as what yours was gonna be done. And we're gonna lay this down. This engine's gonna come off, and mine are rusted, so I was going to show you how to take these off, but they're rusted, and I'm pretty sure they're going to break when they come off. So I may only do it here, but the way it works is that there's a little pin. Let's see, there's a little pin up there that folds over, like that, and you just tap it with a hammer, and it bends back, and then it just slides off, or slides out. I mean. When you do it, it's sort of obvious if you've worked on cars at all. If you've never worked on cars, it probably isn't obvious. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one off, and then I'm going to lay it in front of the camera. You can see. Sorry about that. Camera just decided to cut off for a second. So I'm about to do that. I'm about to cut the camera off anyways. But I did want to point something out for the people who have just started out. These plates right here, you unbolt these and you can see the transmission under there. That's what this is for. It's an access plate. This is an access plate for a CJ. They use the same floor pans, and you get under for things like the clutch and the brakes, and that's where you're. So on a CJ, the brake go right down to the thing, and this is so you can get to it. That's why it's welded on this vehicle, whereas on a CJ you can unscrew it and get through it. This one you get through in case there's a problem with the shifter. You can get to the top, and so I just want to point that out. I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to do a lot of work in here. It's going to be like magic. We're going to come back. There's going to be all kinds of stuff done, just like this. And yeah, we'll have a look. And hopefully we're going to spray some paint today, at least up here, because I can't leave this bare metal. So I'll see you in very shortly. All right?
Yeah.
So we're back. My daughter's here. I just wanted to show you, dash is down, steering wheel's off, and kind of tell you how I did that. So all the bolts around the top that I took out 3/8, I put them in a coffee jar so I don't lose them. So they just unscrew it, simple. The only thing you have to do is over there, is you take your windshield wiper and you just turn it up to get it out of your way and it'll fall down. I've got the crate so that it doesn't fall down. Somebody put a ground wire around here, so that's holding it up. It's not the greatest thing to hold it up, but it'll work. So the way you get the steering wheel out is under the hood. There's a giant pivot, and it's got a 5/8 screw. You just take the one screw out. You come up under there. See that? So you can see that. So,
like you say, this is how you do a post.
So let's just bring this down some. Alright. So down here, there's 3 bolts, and what happens is the little screws that come out, and then there's a ring around the steering column there. And once you've got all these bolts out, the one that runs through the dash, you just have to pull really hard, and this will come out. Just before you do that, as I said, you undo this. Uh-oh, hang on. Technical difficulty. Sorry about that. Wind blew. Alright, sorry. So there's little clips that go on here, and you just pop them off. They're easy to get off. They look like that, and they just pop off. And let's see, let's adjust my camera a little bit. Now it's up for a reason, but I'm going to show y'all something y'all gonna find terrible. For all you allergy people, I'm going to show you something really important. I guess you can see it in front of the camera now. And this is behind the dash. I just want to lay this down as much as I can. Okay, can you see that? This is all the wires. This is actually a good wiring harness. I thought it was worse than it is. It's pretty good. It's got a lot of stuff on it, like I said, from the oil. We'll get a better look at it here in just a minute. As you can see, I'm wearing a respirator. There's a reason for that. That's all dust. And this is sound dampening. You know, you should tear that out. This dust is going to be horrible. You're going to see it because I'm going to blow it out on the camera. If you really want the sound dampening, tear this crap out and put dynamite in there. This stuff is not worth having. And if you've got allergies, you know, this is worst case scenario for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my little blow tool here. Alma, grab me that little tool that's under that green thing. It's pointy. She's going to get my tool, my little assistant here.
Where is it?
Right by your left foot. it's got a straw-looking left foot, baby. The other one. Oh, that's your right foot. You're facing the other direction. Sorry, my fault. Here, this thing right here.
Oh, I didn't know what you were talking about.
This is a blow tool.
Oh,
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show y'all why these tools are so important. Alright, so it just goes in here. Oh. Alright, so I'm going to put my respirator on, sending my daughter away. Because things about to get crazy in here. And I ain't going to be able to talk. Because I'm going to be blowing this out. I'm going to show you. It's coming your way. I'm going to go that way. Alright, I won't be able to talk. I'm going to have this respirator on. I'm going to blow all this out. And you're going to see the difference of what air tool and air gun can make. Alright? So, at a minimum, when you do your Jeep, I think you should blow it out with air. Alright? You know, the floor was completely filthy just from taking the dash off. It's pretty good again. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in behind here, just on the seams. I'm taking this crap out, but I'm going to get on the seams, see where there's rust. And I'm just going to grind that out. You don't have to go very high back here. Like I said, there's still paint, and nobody can see it. I'm going to get the surface rust off the back of this. It's not too hard. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, I would just rub it with a green scrubby pad, clean it up, and maybe paint, you know, just some primer around there. Try to stay away from these controls. For those people who have the heater controls that don't work, it's because these cables rust out. When you've got your dash off, you can see where they go, and you can actually replace these with all different things. You know, you can use choke cables. You can get in any auto parts store. The trick is they have to be tied off and hooked on. So if they don't have a good end, you have to find a way to hook that to that, right? And so we're gonna fix all that. But for now, I'm gonna get some of this respirator and stuff off because it's hard to talk, it's hard to move. And I'm gonna clean my wires, and then I'm gonna get the steering wheel out of here. We're gonna come back to this steering. We're actually gonna make this look nice. We're gonna fix the actual steering wheel itself and all this. I'm gonna bring this camera out here. Sorry, it's gonna be out of focus for a minute. I just want to show people where it comes unbolted at, and show you one of the problems I've got. So it unbolts. Can't get this in here. It unbolts right down there. That's not the bolt. It's the bolt was up here. I'm going to take this whole joint out, and the reason is because mine's completely wore out. That's no good. Alright, I told you I had a lot of problems with steering. This whole Jeep, I guess the steering's all factory. I think this Jeep has 498,000 miles on it, so it's a lot. So I'm going to rebuild the steering. I think that steering and brakes are the thing you should concentrate on as a new person to Jeeps, for obvious reasons. You want to be able to stop and steer. You can address the other stuff as you go. But we're going to stop here. I'm going to clean some stuff up, and my Jeep's going to look a lot different when I turn this camera back on.